So here with Yaroslav and in Petcube, which is a very impressive headquarters, I have to say, here in San Francisco. You also have offices in Kyiv. That's your big office, right?
Yeah.
And then in China. So you've really interested me because, okay, you're one of these guys that had an idea, went halfway around the world to the place where these types of ideas, this is the ecosystem, this is the place where the funding is, and you and your co-founders gave it a go. And now you're what, 5 years in? You've been here 5 years?
Yeah, I've been in San Francisco, I think 4.5.
4.5. And now you have products on the market. It's a very popular product. I just saw your cool new video, your new app, and it's probably been quite an adventurous ride, so I want to get into that here. So tell all of us, how the idea came about, how you ended up leaving Kyiv, coming to San Francisco.
Sure. So we started about 5.5 years ago. There were two co-founders besides me, Alex Neskin and Andrei Klen.
Mm-hmm.
Alex was the original inventor of the Petcube camera. He had a dog. The dog was barking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up with this idea for a camera and added a laser pointer and made an interface so he could watch his dog from work.
Sure.
And he could play with his dog, moving the laser pointer around the room, and the dog would chase the laser, as dogs and cats love doing.
Right.
And then, he basically showed that to folks in the office, and we were working this digital advertising agency called
Mm-hmm.
Prodigy in Kyiv back then. And everyone who would have a pet would say, wow, this is cool, I'd like this thing for my pet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the idea emerged. Well, maybe we should make this product, actually, put it on shelves, sell it,
Mm-hmm.
would be cool, right? And then we started thinking, okay, we could make this product, but is there a place for business? And I think that's one of the things for many entrepreneurs to kind of pause and think, whenever you have idea for something cool,
Mm-hmm.
is this an idea for a product, maybe for a feature to existing product, or is this something that can evolve into a business?
Mm-hmm.
And our thinking was, we basically had these three hypotheses why this would be a great business. First, we looked at the market. Market for pet care is really big. Only in the US it's like $70 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the markets where you didn't see much innovation lately. So over the last 20, 30 years,
Sure.
Things pretty much remain the same, unchanged with the coming of internet, with the coming of smartphones. And we realized, okay, if we're making this way to remotely connect with your pet with really technological way, with latest things available, and if we continue in that way, kind of building this technology company for pets like Apple for pets,
Right.
then this is really powerful. So that was the first hypothesis, this big market, no innovation. If you build disruptive technology company here, that's a big business opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The second thought was, well, we have these cameras that are filming funny cat and dogs videos all day long, right? So the internet was built on cat videos. So we thought, if we have that, and people share that, and all of that comes with Petcube watermark or whatever, this would significantly reduce our cost of user acquisition, cost of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the second idea. Okay, this actually has very big potential in terms of brand building and so on. And the third one, and probably the most conceptually important, was that we realized that this device is an interface for pet to go online. It's these devices, they connect pets to the internet. It's like a smartphone for your pet, right? And if you can connect millions, tens of millions of pets to the internet, you suddenly have this network, and you have all these kind of platform effects and network effects kicking in. And that historically, if you look at history of technology, starting from telegraph or roads, their early networks, or to Facebook connecting all the people to internet, Uber connecting all the cars, this showed to be very powerful. So with that in mind, we kind of started a company, and the mission was to connect pets to the internet. And we recently added to connect pets to the internet and give them a voice. So with hundreds of thousands of cameras that we've sold so far, what we realized we can watch pets and make computer, basically artificial intelligence algorithms that learn pets' behavior and can understand pets using all the latest advances in behavioral science, but also using the data coming from these hundreds of thousands of cameras over all of the days. And we're making some amazing advancements, and hopefully we'll be able to say, okay, giving it, we've been looking at your pet for the last couple of days. It looks like your dog might be getting sick. You should go see a vet.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe you need anti-anxiety training, or your dog is barking too much because of this and that. So long-term view for the company, connect pets to the internet and give them a voice. Hopefully we'll make some contribution to science and our understanding of animals.
And Americans are crazy about pets, right?
That's
Dogs
true.
and cats.
Well, crazy in a good way.
Crazy,
Like, pets are family members here. It's just, it's becoming more and more all over the world.
Sure.
When I just came here to San Francisco, people would ask me, like, well, how is it in Kyiv? And my answer would usually be, well, hipsters are all the same around the world. It's like,
it's true.
In every big
Good
capital.
coffee, good beer.
Yeah. Every big, megapolis around the city, be it Kyiv or Seoul or New York or Mexico, people living pretty much very similar senses and lives.
Right. So you guys, your co-founder Alex had this idea, right? And then you guys teamed up, and you're working on something over there. Like, what was that first step where you said, guys, let's go to the U.S., let's go to San Francisco. We need to, if we're gonna run at this, we gotta go full speed, and we gotta get over there. Like, walk me through that process.
Well, I run a couple companies before Petcube, so I had my own digital advertising agency, then I sold it. Actually, I started it with Andre, who's another co-founder and our chief design officer. So Andre and I were running that for a couple of years, some good clients like Sony Ericsson, Microsoft. And we sold that to this other agency called Prodigy, and that's where we met Alex. And we worked there on different digital ad projects for another 2 years, and then we started Petcube. I also had this NGO called Internet Initiatives, was promoting digital literacy in Ukraine. I was traveling around the world, like different conferences, meeting people, meeting other entrepreneurs, and I was reading TechCrunch, of course.
Right.
And you read TechCrunch, you kind of understand, okay, this is like Silicon Valley is like the center of this technological world, and that's where everything is happening. And obviously, your view is very distorted. I was thinking, okay, I read TechCrunch, I pretty much understand how it is here. Well, no. It's like 5% maybe. But with that, when we kind of started thinking about building a company, the guys were like, well, here's this accelerator out of Ukraine. Maybe we should, take their money. And I was pretty much like, no, we should go apply to the best accelerators, try raising money from the best investors in the world, and we should be thinking in this kind of worldwide framework as opposed to Ukrainian framework. When you're born and raised in a certain country, you tend to compare yourself to other folks in this country or in this city or whatever. And instead, the world is so open and connected these days. You should be comparing yourself to the best known in the universe.
Right.
So that's when we kind of, from the very beginning, we had this view. Okay, we'll at some point we'll build an office in San Francisco, and we'll need it to hire really smart people with lots of experience in what we're doing, and we'll need it to be able to work with some of the best investors and advisors in the world and all that.
So you guys got into Y Combinator, right?
Yeah, but that was a long time after we started. We got into Y Combinator we started in 2012, kind of autumn-ish, September-ish. And we got into YC in November 2016.
And you would say, like, to the Ukrainian audience, this is one of the best ecosystems for...
Absolutely. I think, like, every single founder, entrepreneur should be targeting to get into Y Combinator.
So you got a lot out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And, if there is anything I regret, is that we didn't get into YC earlier.
Okay.
But we have applied 4 times to YC until we got accepted on the 4th time.
Wow.
And when we were accepted, we had like a 30-person team. We raised almost $4 million in investment. We have booked almost almost $2 million in revenue. So we were like an okay company.
Right.
We had the product on the market and things like that. But hey, this year I posted on Facebook, like, if anyone applies to YC, you should like message me and I'll review your application. I'll recommend you, because alumni, they have an ability to recommend.
Right.
And
YC takes, it doesn't matter where you're from, right? It just matters the idea.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I recommended 14 teams. 5 of them got an interview.
Cool.
So an interview is happening last week and this week. So hopefully some of them will get accepted.
Okay, so how was it when you first, let's say culturally, when you first landed in the U.S., right? You know, especially those first 24 hours, you're like, your mind is absorbing all this new information. Everything's different. Yeah. You're comparing to what you know, but then all of a sudden things are different. For me, it's always an interesting part when going to a new country. So what were those first feelings you had when you came to the U.S.?
Yeah, it was funny. I was expecting US to be not much different from Europe. Like I thought, well, maybe US is as much different from France as France is different from Italy.
Right.
And it appeared that no, that's not true. US is a different world. And it was funny because you walk down city and you see like this steam going from like the
sewer system,
yeah, and like you see the yellow cabs or whatnot,
right.
And you get this and you hear like perfectly clear American English, and you get this feeling like you're in a movie, because previously you've only seen those things, those signs, like all those things, and so many Hollywood movies that everyone watched, you know. So that was a funny feeling. It was almost like cartoonish, especially when the child speaks. You start thinking you're in a cartoon, really. It was really funny.
So was there anything that really, other than being in the movie, let's say, was there anything that really grabbed your attention or shocked you or surprised you? Or?
Yeah, I remember like I was staying in this small town outside of San Francisco called San Bruno, and for a couple weeks at the beginning, and in the morning, I would wake up and I would go to BART, which is local, like underground transportation train thing. And I would have to walk like for 15 minutes, and I would look around me and I would not see a single human being, like no pedestrians, like everyone is in cars. It felt like, you know, some zombie apocalypse.
You're like the weird guy.
Where are all exactly, and like folks and like the drivers are quite polite, so folks would actually stop, like when I'm crossing the road, folks would stop from afar, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, they must be freaking out. What is this guy doing here alone, you know?
That's great. But okay, so San Bruno's out of the city a bit. In the city, it's walkable.
Yeah,
but America's like that.
Nice.
America's so weird like that. Like, it's very car-driven culture, obviously, and most infrastructure's set up for cars.
Hey, America is different, right? So I only realized it after some time that San Francisco does not equal old America, right? And it's very different, even as San Francisco compared to Los Angeles, and then you compare to New York, or compared to Texas, or compared to Florida. All is different. Those are almost like separate states. Like separate countries. Well, they are separate states, almost like separate states.
So how long did it take from when you got here? Did it start feeling? I mean, I don't know if you call it home now, if you consider it your home, but how long did it take before it started feeling like okay, this is my place, this is my home?
Yeah, I think maybe 2 or 3 years when I was like, didn't feel any anxieties or like as if I'm like stranger here. But I think, like, in general, the United States are very welcoming to people from other cultures and countries. and I just, it depends on your previous experiences and
Sure.
your age and so on. Yeah, I think there are just like, I think people who live in San Francisco, maybe like 30% of those people were actually born here.
Yeah,
Everyone else
yeah,
came
yeah.
from somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't come from here.
Right.
Yeah.
All these different culture, like Indian people, Chinese people, South American people, different Europeans, everything mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's nice. It's comfortable. Does it feel home? Sure. And Kyiv feels home. And I think, the
Does China feel like home? Have you spent much time there?
No, not for me, but I think
Yeah.
for my co-founder Alex, it does. He spent maybe around 3 years living
Wow.
in there.
And that's
China,
more of a
I
cultural
kind of feel
stretch.
comfortable in China now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely more of a culture stretch, but actually not as far. It's just like
Well,
it's
San
shocking.
Francisco feels like half Chinese almost.
Really, to you?
Well,
It
I
doesn't
mean,
to
it's
me.
I don't know what the demographics are, but I think it's like 35 or 40% Asian, something like that. Yeah, it's really
Interesting,
high.
Interesting. Well, Chinatown in San Francisco is the biggest Chinatown in the world, right?
Yes, and it's interesting because some people never leave it, and you have people that were born there, live their whole lives, and don't speak English, and like,
Wow.
have not left that ecosystem.
Wow.
Because you don't need, if you're surviving in that ecosystem, you don't need, I guess, the outside American
Yeah.
world.
This is funny. Yeah.
So what is it like now when you go back to Kyiv? Now, look, for me, I live in Kyiv now.
Yeah.
I go back tomorrow, actually. And I learn more about my own country
Yeah.
by living outside of it.
Absolutely.
That's how you learn about your country.
Absolutely.
Because when you're in it, this is what you know. If you're a fish in the water, all you know is the water, right? And you don't really learn until you get out for a while. And this trip coming back to America, I felt like a foreigner for a few days, seeing it through maybe a foreigner's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the incongruities and weirdnesses and coolnesses and the bad things about America right off the front. So what is it like when you go back to Kyiv these days? Like you're going back, what, once
Yeah.
every couple months, every 6 months, every year?
Yeah, I mean, historically it's been like once a year.
Okay.
Last time we've been there this fall. I actually spent like September till January in Kyiv.
So you're seeing it like a child. When you don't see a child for a year, you can see marked differences on this child, like how much they grew,
Yeah.
how much more they're speaking. So a year's a good chunk of time. That's good. So what are you seeing, say, the last few times as you've gone back to your own country?
Yeah, well, I'm very closely connected to Ukraine. I guess
Okay.
even when I'm here, I have lots of friends there.
Sure.
I follow the news, and when I go there, I don't know. I think like I have maybe a very idealistic view of Ukraine.
Okay.
I almost have this picture of Ukraine, what I want it to be. And I think my view might be filtering out many of the worse things
Sure.
that are happening. But yeah, I mean, the most striking thing is that everyone is white around you.
Yeah.
It's very,
There's no racism because there's no racism.
it's very mono-ethnic, and that's funny. But yeah, I can't say I noticed that much. I feel like those changes, I still observe them through, as if I was Skyping with my child or whoever, like every week. So
Right,
then
right.
you don't have that effect.
So
you know?
you really have one foot solidly in that world, in the Ukrainian
can say
space.
so. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. So what do you think about you've done this tech, let's call it a tech dream, though I'm sure there's been nightmarish moments because that's how it goes,
for
right?
sure.
Like it's not all
Yeah.
easy, it's not all like the movies. What would you recommend to someone in Ukraine who's young, doesn't exactly know where they're going in life, but they're educated and they have some skills?
Yeah.
Like, if you could be a mentor, let's say, what would you say to them?
Well, I kind of have this framework of how one should build a technological company out of Ukraine. And I believe that today Ukraine is one of the best places in the world to start a global technological company.
Sure.
And there are three reasons for that. One is that Ukraine has very very breadth knowledge in multiple industries. Like Ukraine is one of like a dozen countries that can build an airplane.
Right.
Building an airplane is a big feat. You need knowledge in very different industries, right? And you have all of those specialists. And the reason number two why it's a great place is because the wages these people get compared to like American or like global markets are much lower.
Yeah.
And with that said, these people are actually living, often wise, good professional, living much better lives in Ukraine with those like 4 times lower wages than here. Like, like I'm not only talking about computer science engineers, but let's say someone like who's a programmer in Kyiv, with their salary, that they can afford more than a person with salary 4x of that here in San Francisco.
Right. So okay, if you have a family, say you're married, you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Like, what would be a good salary to live on? Like, okay, you're not
here in San Francisco.
No, in Kyiv. Like, okay, you're living a comfortable life.
Well, it's hard to say.
Like, if you're a developer making...
I never had a family or 2 kids or so on, but I think, like, you know, it depends where you live and Kyiv.
But say, for example, if you're making $3,000 a month, you're living...
$3,000, like, I think, like, $2,000 to $4,000, you can live pretty comfortably in Ukraine.
Yeah.
If you get, like, 4x or even, like, 5x of that in San Francisco, it's not a fact that you can live with like family and 2 kids and like all of that, right?
Brutal.
Yeah.
If you're doing it that way.
So that's like the second reason why Ukraine is such a great place to build this, because you know you give me if I earn $1 on global market or like $1 in $1 of an investment, you know, for the money I can build like 1 factory here or 5 factories in Ukraine.
Right.
I can hire 1 engineer here or 5 engineers in Ukraine. I can build like 1 feature for my product here or 5 features in Ukraine. Try out competing me. That's an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Right. And that when you compare that, you know, breadth of knowledge and level of knowledge and the level of kind of standards of living that you have in Ukraine.
Right.
With those wages, there is definitely like disconnect with the global economy, and if you're an entrepreneur, that's up to you to leverage that. And finally, like the third reason why I think Ukraine is an amazing place to start a company is because it has this incredible energy that you and I were talking before. That many other countries cannot show, right? Like these people, they've done like 3 revolutions in the last 30 years, like 91 and 2004 and 2014.
Sure.
And my theory is that it's because Ukraine, as a nation, Ukrainians didn't have their kind of sovereignty, their country for over 300 years. And this nation was trying to get this independence and sovereignty and manifest itself and like show itself to the world and like, here, look at us, look what we can do. Very similar to how Jewish people didn't have their state for 2,000 years, but kept their nation. And now all of that energy is pouring, and you have it manifesting itself in beautiful restaurants in the cities and like Olympics or whatever, different victories in sports and different things that are happening. You had the war that definitely, you know, strengthens the people, and you have all this creative potential in technology sector that is now booming in Ukraine. You have all these new companies.
Right.
So these 3 factors, the breadth of knowledge, the difference with the global market, and the incredible energy, I think, make Ukraine one of the best places to build a tech company.
Yeah, interesting. And I find like whenever you can leverage currencies to your advantage, you have that advantage. And I don't see in what you just said, in the second point you made, nobody's losing in that except your competition.
Absolutely.
Like you're paying people.
It's
well,
like
the goal is you pay well, like it's going to be better than the normal pay in Ukraine, so people are
Yeah.
living a better quality life, right? Your business will do better because your costs are down.
This is like someone getting underpaid. It's not that.
Exactly. See, what I've found, and I have some friends working in Ukraine right now, if you create a good environment, right? Treat people with respect and dignity, structure things in the right way, demand a lot but be fair, like a highly capable population. At least with the young people from what I've seen.
Sure.
Like the young people are very ready for that. And I'm trying to think of another part of the world that has the things set up as good as you just said, and I can't think of one offhand, to be honest. Because if you work for India, there's a cost benefit in India. Such a cultural gap. I've done it. Way harder. It's much more difficult from my experience. So do you think this is like Ukraine's in some sort of, say, renaissance right now? Or there's like, it's got this window where, this nice window that's sort of opened up, and now things can go in and out of it and work.
I certainly hope so. Yeah. I think so. I think, for anyone who's starting a company, it's just, what I would say, you should definitely think globally. Like, don't close yourself to like, building some food joint in some Kyiv district. It's like, this is not the biggest thing you can do. Every young person should try to do the biggest, coolest thing they can do.
Yeah, but what if that's their thing? They just want to have a nice restaurant and like live a simple life, and that's
maybe no. Well, that's fine. It's just like, ask that question. You should ask yourself that question: is that the biggest, coolest thing I can do? And if you are sure this is actually what you want to do,
then you're on the right
do
path.
it. Right? Yeah. I'm not saying everyone should build like the next Google.
Right.
But what I'm seeing is many of my friends in Ukraine. Incredibly smart people are just as smart as some of the smartest people I meet around the world.
Yeah.
But some of the smartest people here in the Valley or in China or in France are starting these companies with global ambitions.
Right.
And some of my really, really smart friends in Ukraine are just maybe thinking in not such a broad way. And
do you think that's because maybe that's residual reality from the fall of the Soviet Union, when that part of the world was so closed off, and it's still baked into the mindset? Is that why, or why do you think it is?
I mean, all of these things, I believe, are explained by the history, by the heritage. And, obviously, Soviet Union, you didn't have any, like, free market. You have, like, this crazy Soviet command and control type of economics, no entrepreneurship. There was this movement in early like Soviet years, 20s or whatnot, where actually the Soviets would arrest all the kind of wealthy people, all the entrepreneurs, like wealthy farmers or whatnot, and the message was, well, these are like bad folks because they're exploiting like the whatever village men and so on.
The collective common good.
Exactly, and we should like take everything they've earned and like distribute between everyone, right? So that's how the class of entrepreneurs was basically killed 100 years ago. And obviously they didn't have kids, they didn't pass their knowledge to their kids, and where here you had the golden rush and people who made their money in the golden rush, like transferring their wealth and knowledge to their children, and that was on and on and on. You had like Wall Street and all of that. It wasn't happening in Soviet Union, right? And obviously that's why entrepreneurship is not that strong. Another thing is, what is called a short planning horizon. So that's what's happening in many like Eastern Europe countries or many poorer countries in the world. People are so much stuck in this daily grind that they don't have, they can't think like 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. They only think, months ahead. They don't know what's going to happen, if the next war is going to hit or something like that, or next economic crisis.
So by having the world as your audience or your consumer base, these geopolitical incidents that happen in parts of the country or wherever really aren't as, once it's almost a security measure to be thinking of the world, right? Because if you're baked into that's your clientele only, then you're going to be moved around quickly by the whims of geopolitics
Yeah.
and political sound bites and whatever that are completely out of your control.
Well, I mean, geopolitics exists for any place in the world,
Sure.
right? And just recently we had this crisis situation with North Korea, and like we kind of, I'm sure many people were scared of that, right? We're unsure about what's gonna happen. So, or you can have like a natural disaster, a hurricane, tornado striking, whenever. So, like, you can obviously follow market signs and like look at, okay,
Sure.
you know, here's what American administration giving Ukraine some like weapons, or like placing a huge contract, and that's probably a sign that they trust in it. You know, I personally don't think there is like even a slight probability of a big war in Europe. But I think making world economy one global and interconnected tool is one of the best ways to ensure like stability, and,
For sure.
and there will be
It's
no
the
wars and
McDonald's
all
theory.
that.
Have you ever heard of this? Like, two countries that have McDonald's have never fought each other.
Yes, I love it.
But I don't know if that still stands. I'm trying to think of any recent
I think
conflicts.
Russia and Ukraine will definitely break.
Yeah, that broke the McDonald's theory. But yeah, it's true. If you don't try to destabilize the person that gives you money or has your money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty
That's why,
straightforward.
like, China U.S. is kind of really a really connected couple.
So what about, okay, so I hear living in Ukraine, corruption. That's probably the number one word, right? You would hear. If I bring up business or starting anything, corruption's going to get in the way. Love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, you know, maybe it's easy for me to judge because, you know, no one tried to do something bad or unlawful to my business. But, you know, certainly sometimes people are that are telling that, you know, they have all the right to claim that. But also, oftentimes I hear that from just naysayers, from people who never tried starting anything, and they just like blindly repeating things they've heard around.
It's a good excuse,
like,
right?
I'm not going to start my business because of corruption. Like, really? That's a BS. There's this Ukrainian rocket scientist and constructor of some of the first rockets in the world, Sergei Korolev. And he has this quote that I really like, and he said, the one that wants to work looks for opportunity.
Right.
The one that doesn't looks for an excuse.
Exactly. Do you think there are a lot of excuses?
I think there are a lot of excuses, and I think, you know, corruption in like different crazy things exists around the world, and like here in the U.S., well, you don't have like blatant corruption, you know, kind of pressuring the business, but you have things like crazy high taxes. Like, if people who are talking about bad corruption in Ukraine would even like think a little bit about the taxes in the U.S., like compared it to Ukrainian taxes, and then maybe think about, like, if you're a businessman, if like we put aside the ethical side of things, like even if you think of corruption as certain tax on the operations in the country, that's actually much lower than paying taxes in the U.S.
Well, how do you feel about your payroll taxes every 2 weeks? Does that make you happy?
Well,
have you seen that? I mean, I run a payroll, and the reason I say that, it's just like astronomical how much you have to pay per employee per taxes. And in Ukraine, it's something like, I think if you have independent contractors, it's like 5% or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Which is unheard of here. I mean, if it was 5% in
and then you also add your sales tax and then income tax if you have income
here.
Here.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, it's like suddenly like almost half of everything you earn. Like, if you do something, almost half.
Yeah,
like
in California, it's about
sell
half.
a company, like half of that will go to the state and all that.
It's not like the roads are great in San Francisco either.
Right.
That's a popular belief I hear in Ukraine.
Well, they're better than Kyiv, but...
They're better than Kyiv, but they're pretty damn bad for the amount of tax revenue coming into the city. You think they would have that together, right?
Yeah, when I hear when people from China come from here, they're like, really? This is like the tech capital of the world? But like, look at this airport, look at these roads. It's like, this doesn't look new at all.
It's not like the movies.
But that's the paradox, right? If you have this ecosystem and the kind of infrastructure that was built half century ago was
Exactly.
state of the art then.
Yeah.
And their infrastructure will be old 50 years from now, and they'll probably won't be rebuilding that often.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, it's really interesting. So Ukraine is, even though corruption exists, right? And that's a big loaded word. It depends what you're doing, what you're going to deal with. You haven't dealt with anything. My friends haven't dealt with anything. I think in business models where you're working in the ones and zeros, it's not as much of a problem versus building an apartment
It might
building.
be a problem. Actually, there were lots of attacks on technological companies recently, and they were very much condemned by the community, and as they basically decreased the chance of any Ukrainian company getting investment or anything
Mhm.
like that. And there were like meetings with the prime minister and the president, and the prime minister was vowing for it that, okay, I'll stand behind it. There was even some law was signed for to disallow these random tax service checks in
Right.
Ukrainian companies. I'm not sure how that helps, but definitely there is a way forward out of that. And one of those things when you're building your business in such places that tend to have these corruption issues, and Ukraine is not only a place like that in the world. Actually, in
Mhm.
China there are big corruption risks.
Mhm.
You just try to get some extra insurance as a businessman, right? And you work with some of the reputable investors in the country. You build your relationships, and those things provide you some layer of extra insurance that nothing bad will happen. And if something bad will happen, again, those will be the people you'll call first.
But
and
that
they'll
sounds
try
like
to help it.
insider type stuff. So if you're talking to some American guy who wants to do something there, that sounds very threatening, I would say. Like, know this guy, know that guy, and then...
Yeah, I mean that's definitely not how we prefer doing things
Right.
in the civilized world. It is just how it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like you want to move away from that, but then if you want to do business in that place, those are rules of the game in that place, right?
Yeah.
There are different countries with different rules of the game.
So
like, not all of them are completely ethical.
with those pre-existing rules of the game in Ukraine, you're saying it's definitely worth it for Ukrainians to start whatever it might be there, and for foreigners.
Absolutely. I think, with all the great things I've said about why Ukraine is one of the best places to start a company,
Yeah.
there are definitely challenges, and we
Yeah.
talked through some of them. We talked
Yeah.
about geopolitical challenges.
Sure.
I think there's little you can do here, but they're
Right.
everywhere. We talked about internal challenges with corruption, and you can do certain things against that, and also being like pretty publicly well-known company helps with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look here, like with the new Trump administration,
Right.
you have risks with that.
Sure.
Jeff Bezos is paying some price now, I'm sure, after Donald Trump's tweets against Amazon, their stock went down.
Right.
So and then the third reason, the third problem is lack of experienced managers, right? And we talked about this.
Yeah.
Historically, there was nowhere for them to come from. And what do you do with that? Well, I think you need to hire great managers where you have them, including here in Silicon Valley. So that's why I think people from Silicon Valley coming to Ukraine to start their own businesses will be very pleasantly surprised by what they can achieve, and will bring that necessary experience and knowledge and their connections with other people who are experienced and knowledgeable, and their ability to recruit some of the great managers.
Right.
I think you are one of the examples, people who came to Ukraine and kind of realized, wow, this is really a treasure trove.
Right.
And there's another friend of mine, Jong-Sung Kim, another entrepreneur from San Francisco, who's building his company in Ukraine now after selling a couple businesses. I think the last company he sold is now trading their stocks, like market cap is over 1.5 billion. So a really successful businessman, and he's really enjoying, first life in Ukraine, and second, the magnitude of tech talent he can get there.
Right. So, I mean, you have a very, like you said at the beginning, sort of an optimistic, rose-colored
Yeah.
glass look at it all. But
Look,
I'm going to back it up because I look at, you can look at the world. There's two realities always going on in every situation, right?
Yeah.
And there are parallel frequencies. And there's the positive and the negative. You can walk down the streets in Ukraine every day and just look at the negative. Or San Francisco, I can look at the bums on the ground and get all bummed out about stuff. Or you can look at the opportunities, and it's not like there are no opportunities. There's plenty of opportunities. That's the thing. So I think personally, from my experience, and I haven't been there that long, is there's a lack of, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, there's a lack of positive reinforcement that people are able to achieve amazing things if they go for it.
Yeah, I do agree. I think one of the most important things in human learning is learning from an example,
Right.
Role models, right?
Yeah.
And I think we definitely need more good role models in Ukraine. And I have this story, that I always tell you. Was traveling by train maybe 10 years ago in Ukraine. I had this one babushka telling to me that if you were a member of parliament, you would be corrupt as well. With kind of all of her 50 years of knowledge and wisdom and really speaking from authority. And I was like, really? And it struck me that that's a worldview that many people share in these post-Soviet countries, that to be successful you have to be corrupt, because their role models were corrupt members of village councils, members of parliament, the corrupt President Yanukovych, the corrupt judges, the corrupt police. And they were looking at those folks, okay, these folks can do whatever they want, they have expensive cars, that is success, right?
Right.
And what we need in Ukraine, also in Russia, also in Belarus, we need new role models, and I believe entrepreneurs could be those models, but not only, which will basically show you that to be successful, you gotta, get a good education, learn hard, and then work hard, and then you'll be successful and create something valuable for the world. So I think the more Ukrainian entrepreneurs can succeed, the better it will be for the whole country. And that's why I want Ukraine to have hundreds of companies like Petcube and bigger and better.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to go after global markets, to set a goal to become a leader in one of the industries, and to basically go to that goal and never give up, because you're actually going for something bigger than just your personal success and success of people who are doing this with you, bigger than just creating great product for your consumers. You're going for becoming a role model for the whole nation and an example of the right way to be successful and to do something great. And it is also, again, important, as we said, from national defense standpoint, the more interconnected you are with global economy, the more world cares about you.
Yes.
When Paris had those attacks at Charlie Hebdo, everyone was like, "Je suis Charlie Hebdo," right? Was these manifests around the world, right? When something like terrorist attacks happen somewhere in Libya, why doesn't world care this much, right?
Because here's my theory with that. Everybody knows something good about France and Paris.
Exactly.
Right? They know the Eiffel Tower. They know the beautiful mountains. They know croissants. They know French cuisine.
Yeah.
And so you take a country like Ukraine, and it's one of these countries in the world, that only the bad information gets out. That's the only export is bad. It's post-Soviet dirty politics. It's corruption. It's bad economics. It's bad governance. Mail order brides.
Yeah.
And those are the messages, right? So when it hits the international news, and then now in Ukraine is in the Senate, it's surrounded by negativity.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone sees. And I say this all the time, but to put it in context, a Ukrainian thinking about Colombia it's usually a negative thing, right? Like if you say Colombia, they're going to say
funny,
drug-ridden,
Yeah.
dangerous,
Yeah.
this and that. And Colombia's made huge strides in the last 10 years. I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time there. It's
Yeah,
one
or
of my
like
favorite countries.
African countries like Zimbabwe. You can hear that in Ukraine. Someone would be talking like, well, this is like Zimbabwe something like.
Right. It's just
You know,
weird. It's the
And
information
people
we
never been to that country. They have no idea.
Well, I went to
It's like-
Africa last winter.
Probably has bigger GDP than Ukraine, like by.
Right. I went to
Or-
Eritrea last year, small country near Ethiopia, and everyone's like, "Be careful. It's going to be dangerous." And I'm like, "This is one of the safest countries on the planet." Right.
Yeah.
So it's just the lack of information,
Yeah.
right? But that's the beauty with the way doing these things, guys like you speaking about your stories.
Actually, when you go to down Market Street or Tenderloin, do you feel as safe as in Kyiv? I don't think so.
No way. No,
Yeah.
there are less crazy people in Kyiv. I don't know if they remove them. I don't know what happens.
Yeah.
But in San Francisco, it's much more dangerous. Nobody believes me in Kyiv.
Should come and
Facts,
see.
straight
Come
up.
and
It's
see.
way more dangerous. People in San Francisco, they don't go to Bayview. Have you been there?
Bayview.
It's not that far. It's over here.
Oh.
Hunters Point, Bayview.
Yeah, I've been there. That's
Okay.
a nice place, but people
It's-
there are.
It's gonna walk around at night, and I don't think
Sketchy.
you'll feel that comfortable, right?
Well, but yeah, the water and everything is nice.
The
trees.
water's nice. The guy with the knife isn't that nice? Maybe not, right?
A friend of mine was mugged with a gun
Yeah.
just like a year ago here in Mission. That's crazy.
I mean, it's hit and miss in the U.S. I think like 80% of crimes take place in 5% of the zip codes, something like that. I grew up in a home where we did not lock the door ever. We had no keys for the door.
Wow.
Okay, but you wouldn't want to be around here like that. So it just depends where you're at, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm going to compare cities, okay, I know there's some so-called bad neighborhoods, Triashina, which I didn't think was that bad, just from my impressions of walking around. Things can happen everywhere for sure.
Yeah.
But it surprises the hell out of me that that city is as safe as it is. Despite all the, like, look at the history, the recent history.
Yeah.
It was part of the Soviet Union not long ago. Look how much change has taken place. And the fact that it's that stable and I can walk down a street and go into a park and just chill out and everyone's doing the same thing is pretty amazing and remarkable. It's not Latin America where you get a knife for your, I mean, that's very, I'm being very obfuscate and generalistic here, but like go to Sao Paulo and compare. It's not even in comparison. Or Buenos Aires or Lima, Peru. These are proper dangerous places. Ukraine is not one of them. Okay, there's skirmish in the Far East that's taking up a very small percentage of the country.
Yeah.
But overall, the country is super stable. And I think for foreigners, when they first get there, it's more intimidating than the actual reality. Like there's the, you know, the guys in the full black coat, like me right now, right? But like full leather, head to toe, you know, that stone face and the, you know.
Yeah, people are not smiling that much in Ukraine. That's one of the things.
Right.
I'd love to change that actually. So, but that, you know, that's
I sort of like it though. I like the authenticity of the place where like nobody gives you you earn your smiles. You only get a smile if it's 100% meant.
Yeah, no, like I think that there is a gradient. You know, if you're like buying something in a store and like someone's looking at you like this and
like they're pissed off you bought something from them.
Right. So that's not cool. But
not at all. That blatant rudeness sucks. Like there's no space for that.
I do
There's no
agree.
need for that.
But hey, that's your perspective coming from California. I love the authenticity. Here, many people from Ukraine, what I hear, like, oh, these Americans are like always smiling. You don't know if they like you or not. This is fake. And so when I was coming here, that was what I heard. And when I lived here for a while, I understood it's not fake. It is just a kind of culture that people are generally positive and trying to create this generally positive environment, which is welcoming and so on. And it's actually nice. It you know, there's this research that if you hold a pencil in your teeth, you make your muscles kind of smile, and that it actually changes something in your brain, and you become happier because of that. So it works both ways. You might be smiling because you're happy, but you also might become happy because you start smiling. So
And when you smile at the world smiles back. That's basically how it goes, wherever you're at.
Word from one jazz song.
Is it? I didn't know where that came from.
So,
Is it from? Okay.
From like swinging or a jazz.
Which okay, that's another thing I want to talk about. You love, it's not swing dancing you're doing. What kind of dancing?
It is swing dancing.
It is swing dancing.
Yeah.
But you took that up here, right?
What I'm doing is called Lindy Hop, and
Lindy
it's,
Hop,
it's the kind of the most popular kind of swing dancing. There is also this thing called West Coast swing, which is different.
Okay.
So I'm dancing Lindy Hop, yeah.
So is that like you're obviously you're in a startup, so you're working your face off. So that's your outlet, right? Dancing.
Yeah, pretty much. Dancing is maybe one of the single best decisions I've made in my life.
Why?
Beginning to dance. Why? It just made me a much better person on so many levels, and it is just one of the most fun activities I can think of. And I started dancing in Kyiv actually about 8 years ago. There's great dancing community in Kyiv and all around Europe, and then you actually get to travel to different like dancing events around Europe. One of the biggest communities is in Sweden. And when I came here, obviously I was like, well, this is almost like American national dance, a Lindy Hop. So I found
you can just plug in easily.
You can plug in almost in any big city of the world.
That's good advice actually. So if a Ukrainian or someone from abroad is moving to the States, it's like figure out that niche, what your passion is, and then get into that ecosystem.
Like if you're passionate about any kind of sports, go play with local folks that football or basketball.
And there's like everything,
yachting, windsurfing, hiking, biking, whatever you want.
So dancing is taught. I mean, okay, so it ticks off that social element of life. Like it's social, obviously, FaceTime with people.
I think like I'm an engineer, so from an engineering standpoint, dancing is a very efficient activity because in like those couple hours that you dance, you actually do a number of things at the same time. So this is a physical exercise.
Okay. This
is your social time, meeting new people. This is a time to learn something about yourself and your body, and then self-control. This is a way to make art. This is your artistic manifestation. Every dance you do is an act of art.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think for any engineer, it's good because that helps them to become less socially awkward. It's kind of a cliche that engineers are socially awkward, but there is certain truth to that. Like,
well, you can't have everything. No human can have everything, right? Like
I do believe you can.
I'm terrible. You do believe you can?
There's this concept of the Renaissance man, right?
Sure.
Like Da Vinci was a Renaissance man.
Of course.
That can do everything, and that's kind of nice.
Okay, you can
do
do everything, but you can't do everything well. I cannot engineering well and be okay. Here's the caveat, and be happy with my life, because it's just not what I'm interested in. If you have to sit me down to complex mathematics, I'm not enjoying myself.
Yeah, maybe you didn't have a great teacher.
I
can
did.
show you
the problem. I think the problem with education, and it's changing a lot. But in my education, it was just a procedural process, and there was no hands-on element to it. And there's algebra all over this room, and I never could apply it.
You don't understand why do you need it?
I didn't understand how it applied to my life, but also like if I can't tangibly connect something with, say, this surreal world that I live in, then it's not there at all. It has to be used. Like I can't rote memorize language. I have to like connect it with something, and then I can remember a word. So it's just the learning style.
No, I think the learning system all around the world is so broken. It's like the thing I'm most passionate about, like after Petcube, I would really like to go and do something in learning and education. I think there's so much opportunity for innovation in that space, really.
So interesting. There will be an after Petcube then.
What's that?
There will be an after Petcube.
Well, I hope so. It's.
But why education? Do you feel like? Well, I'll let you speak for yourself. Why would you pick that?
I think if you, I mean, I got this idea when I was probably like 16. I was kind of always really interested in how to make like the country better, Ukraine better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started participating in some conferences around the world and like doing some NGO stuff, and it was kind of that worldview kind of expanded to the world. Like, how do you make this world a better place? And you can't really make one piece of it better. It's one all interconnected thing. It's like healing your finger, hoping to heal all of your body. You cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the most efficient thing, what is the most efficient activity if you want to make world a better place? And I somehow figured that education is probably that, because
Mm-hmm.
if you improve this education, like what everyone like does to learn, or I should say learning, because education is institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
Learning is not institutionalized. It's a deeper concept.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can improve how people learn, you basically improve all the areas. You improve science, you improve medicine, you
Mm-hmm.
improve human rights, you improve how democracies work. Democracies cannot work in societies that have bad education.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, actually, we see things that some might call as failing democracies, you know.
Right.
It's kind of democratic, but results in choosing corrupt leaders or some crazy things. So I think that's why learning is the most important thing we should do, and it is also so broken. I just feel
Mm-hmm.
I just see so many opportunities. Like, it hasn't changed for centuries. Like, the fact that we transported the textbook from the walls of the cave to like to paper, and then
Right.
to electronic medium, it's not innovation. It's just like medium change, and especially with like artificial intelligence getting more advanced
Mm-hmm.
and taking over many jobs. I'm sure, like I'm not like trying to scare anyone with this dystopian future, but it's like, given that cars will be driven by robots within the next like 5 to 10 years, it's like a no-brainer.
Right.
And many other jobs like translators, all those things. So we'll have huge population that will need to learn new skills. And how do you do that efficiently? How do you,
Right.
you have these billions of people around the world with smartphones in their pocket,
Mhm.
with access to all the world's information,
Mhm.
and they're playing Candy Crush Saga instead, right? They're like playing those dumb games, and they're maybe like making $10
Well, it's
a
escapism,
month.
right? It's escapism. You want to escape the world you're in.
Right, but then I believe there are ways to engineer those experiences in the way that people also learn and improve and maybe earn more money, and then kind of move up away from this poverty into
Mhm.
better society.
So, I mean, you're an educated guy. Did you go to public school in Kyiv?
I did,
Okay.
yeah.
And you went to university there?
Went to Kyiv Polytechnics. It's one of the best technical university in Ukraine.
So even though you've been here almost 6 years, your country stays strongly burning within, and you would love to go back and have a purpose in regards to education. And
Yeah, well, I think, those are different things that are not necessarily interconnected.
okay.
My country is definitely something that's within my heart and will always be there, because you cannot forget your mother or
Sure.
whatever. That's not to say I'm not feeling in a way patriotic about the United States,
Okay.
because this is a great country. I love it,
Mhm.
and I really want it to be a great place. And then things I'm thinking about in terms of education also, they're not necessarily to improve education in Ukraine. They're to improve education everywhere,
Sure.
and in Ukraine included. And then the third part of it, am I going back? Well, yes, but not because I want to do something in education or because that burns in my heart, because I just love that place. So
You will go back
yeah.
to Ukraine.
I'm going back and forth.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think there's like one kind of home.
Yeah.
It's like the meaning of home is becoming blurred.
I can completely relate
Yeah.
with this. And know what it makes? It makes many people uncomfortable when you can't give them exact timelines, because we're so conditioned to know when there's a beginning and an end with everything, right? So it's like, so when do you leave? How long are you staying in Ukraine? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'd be there for a while. I really like it. I feel like I'm just getting started there. But where are you settling down? I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you have, what matters is what's inside of you, right? And the actual physical place is not as important. It's becoming less and less important, because if your economics aren't tied to it, right?
Yeah.
And I have a great tribe of people in San Francisco, and it's great hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And I've loved it. And then I'm going back to Kyiv. I'm having a party Saturday night, bunch of people over, seeing my girlfriend, seeing great friends, and it's like, that's great too. And I don't really identify with the geography as much as just like the people I have in these places.
Right. It's just new concept people need to internalize. Like
right.
now,
because
you
there is
don't,
no
you don't
stability
have to
in it.
have one place.
Yeah.
Which
There's no stability in it, right? There's no stability in like in a specific place, in a job, in a marriage. If you look statistically,
you can have stability, but you actually lose if you choose stability in modern world. You lose. You want to be flexible to be on the winning side.
Exactly.
Just
I don't mean there's, okay, let me rephrase that. These institutions that we were conditioned to believe as being stable might be and they might not be.
Yeah.
There's no direct correlation actually. I mean, if you look, more than half people get divorced here. So does that mean marriage is secure? No, it doesn't actually. Doesn't mean your marriage isn't going to be secure. Mine isn't going to be secure, right? But statistically, it's not. Right? Statistically, it's not. And I think the more the world, like you said, you need to reinvent yourself and change with the times. The more you can keep your toes light above the earth, the more you can follow these opportunities and pivot and alter and go whatever path you need to go down to be successful.
And if I think about some of the life choices I've made and I'm making, I'm kind of almost always choosing flexibility instead of stability.
Right.
And I think that's also kind of pretty foreign concept for people living under a lot of stress. And not to say I'm not living under a lot of stress.
It's a different
in
stress
my own way. Yeah, if it's existential stress, it is very different. So if you're not sure, if your bottom of your Maslow pyramid is not filled, you're not sure about where you're gonna sleep, what are you gonna eat. Those people really strive for stability.
Sure.
But once you have that, you actually begin striving for flexibility and different options and being able to react to changing environment.
In the upper part of that pyramid.
Self-realization, things like that.
Yeah. Cool. Yaroslav, it's been very cool talking with you.
Yeah.
You're an inspiration.
Pleasure's
You're
mine.
like an inspirational character in general. Doesn't matter if you're Ukrainian, American, or whatever. Like what you've done is quite cool, and your outlook on life. And you've aged quite well. I have no idea your age, actually. How old are you?
29.
29. You've done an insane amount. And I feel like you're just getting started. So, congrats.
Yeah, thanks so
for
much.
that.
It was a great conversation.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you in Kyiv.
Yeah, sure. See you.
You were great.